Good morning. My name is Kyle, and I happen to be the pastor over at New Life Church on Golf Links, which is just right around the corner from you guys. And I know that it looks a little different this morning. That's actually where we are right now, is in New Life Church. There was some technical difficulties, but I wanted to share the best gift of Christmas with all of you ladies and all of you moms who weren't able to be there this morning. But before I dive in, I wanted to give a little bit about me. My name, like I said, my name is Kyle. I've pastored for about 5 years and 2 years here in Tucson. And many of you might have met my wife, Melinda, and my wonderful boys, Levi and Luke. Luke is the little blonde hair, blue-eyed baby that gets passed around all the time. But I wanted to share something with you this morning. Getting to know me a little bit, I wanted to share about a Christmas gift. In fact, I wanted to ask, have you ever gotten a Christmas gift that has changed your life? Have you ever received a gift that maybe it wasn't expensive, maybe it was, but it was meaningful? And the impact that the gift had on you was able to change your view of either somebody who gave it to you or your view of the world as a whole. Have you ever got a gift that was so meaningful it had to be cherished? You see, when I was little, maybe 3 or 4 years, my parents split up. And when my parents split up, my mom took my brother and I, and we moved from Florida to California, back to her home and back to her family. And when we did that, I don't remember much. I didn't have a lot of words or a lot of things to articulate. But I remember that I knew that my world was drastically different. That for whatever reason, I was going to be missing my dad. That he wasn't around as much. That because of some choices and some things going on, all I knew was that on a day-to-day basis, I didn't see him anymore. And naturally, my mom's family just dismissed any time that I brought him up, and they tried to downplay it, and I know now that it was a pain. It was a hurt to the family. But I remember that first Christmas after my parents split up was the most Christmassy Christmas I've ever had in my life. That for whatever reason, probably to kind of overcompensate for some of the things going on in the family and the divorce and all those things, we got more Christmas presents than I have ever got in my life. I remember not only did we get more Christmas presents, we did more Christmas things. We had multiple Christmas trees. The house was decorated. It was like everybody was trying to make up for the fact that life was different. And I remember sitting there thinking, man, these toys are cool. I remember thinking how great it was to have all of these toys, but still being unable to articulate that something was missing. That because of the way that I felt, because my dad wasn't there, I felt like something wasn't quite right. You see, that was the Christmas that I learned that Christmas is more than just presents. It's more than Christmas lights or even Christmas trees or even the holiday drinks at Starbucks. Because all of those things fade. That come January, come February, all of those things are gone. But Christmas stays with us. There's a reason year after year we come back to Christmas, and it's not those things. You see, there's another reason that Christmas is so special to us. And I found myself asking this morning, what makes Christmas special then? And to answer that, we need to go back over 2,000 years to a small town called Bethlehem. To a family that has the most unique story in history, but is also not that different from you and from me. You see, back in Bethlehem some 2,000 years ago, there was a family that was just starting out. They weren't even really a family yet. Just a man who loved a woman and wanted to get married because they had fallen in love. And they had big dreams of what their life was going to look like. And for those of us who are married or have been married, then you know what that's like. That moment of giddiness and excitement and planning either in reality or just in dreams for the future. It feels like the world is open to these possibilities now that you're blending these two lives together. But then life happens. Bills come unexpectedly. Wonderful bundles of joy come sometimes unexpectedly. Still loved, but unexpected. Sometimes it's jobs or moves that we didn't plan on. Sometimes it's simply that the dreams that we had were not founded in reality, and therefore reality is different than we thought it would be. But in all cases, life happens and things get messy. That was Mary and Joseph. You see, Mary finds herself pregnant out of wedlock, which is a huge no-no in the time. And an angel comes to her and he tells her, don't worry, it's God's. Because people believe that. See, Mary now has to tell Joseph, the man that she loves, she's having a baby with somebody else. And quite frankly, he's most certainly not going to believe her. Because who believes, don't worry, babe, it's God's baby? We, with the benefit of hindsight, know that that's happened once in the Bible this time, but never before and never again. And so all of a sudden, all of the plans, all of the dreams, all of what they thought life would look like is changing. In that moment, in that mess, God started to move. You see, everyone always hopes that life gets better, that things get better. It's the American dream. Buy the nice house, have a beautiful family, go on vacation all the time. We always hope, no matter where we are, no matter what we're doing, that life gets better. But in no time do we feel we need more hope than when things aren't going well. When the bills are piling up, when the kids don't sleep, and we're going on months and months of not sleeping. When we can't seem to get on the same page as our spouse, and it just feels like everything we do is wrong. When things start to fall apart, that's when we hope for brighter days. You see, in those moments, that hope for brighter days, that drive for something better, that is a biblical hope. And I don't know if you're religious or where you stand with God right now, but I'm telling you, if you believe that things get better, that hope comes from the Bible. That is a biblically founded ideal. You see, as a human race, we come up short. We make our own plans, we hope for the best, and then things just don't go the way that we thought they would go. Guys, that is the human story. And as moms, I'm sure any time you have ever planned a trip, you know what I'm talking about. You make all the plans, the hotel reservations, you're ready, you're excited, this is going to be great. And then there's a blowout. You guys know what I'm talking about. And that derails the trip. For whatever reason, the spouse isn't in the mood. For whatever reason, that the trip just quickly spirals because our plans are not God's plans. Because we need something better than what we can do ourselves. You see, God's promise is a realization of that hope. In Isaiah chapter 9, he promises to send a Messiah. He promises that he will be God with us, and he'll come to our struggling. He'll come to our mess. He'll come be part of what we're doing. Isaiah 9:6 says, "For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace." And if you're thinking to yourself this morning, who in the world is Isaiah? Isaiah is a major prophet from the Old Testament. And if you are familiar with your Bible, you might be familiar with Isaiah. His book in the Bible is very large. And if you're not, I highly encourage you to read your Bible. As a pastor, I feel obligated, read your Bible. There's a lot of good stuff in here. But either way, if you're unfamiliar with Isaiah, Isaiah is what we would call a well-known prophet of the time. You see, Isaiah has a history of receiving prophecies from God and those prophecies coming true. This isn't some random guy on the street corner or in an alley or whatever yelling all these doomsday prophecies. I know that we've lived through 20-something of them in our lifetime. This is a man who's known for hearing from God and that being true. And so when he speaks on behalf of God, it's given as fact. It's not, oh man, this is crazy. It's this is what's happening because Isaiah hears it from God. So when Isaiah promises a child, a Messiah, it's known to be fact. And we can talk for hours and even days on why Jesus is this Messiah. But that aside, if we just take it this morning and roll with it, we can have another conversation another time. Jesus becomes God's promise in action. See, when Mary and Joseph have this baby, when they have this moment and the angels come to them, this is God coming to be with us in our mess. And let's face it, we're messy. This is God saying, I'm not going to wait for things to pan out. I'm not going to watch you struggle from afar. But I'm going to come right where you are, right where we are, and all of the things that we have going on, all of the chaos and all of the craziness and all of the wildness that is raising young children. And say, hey, I'm here for you, with you in this moment. Mary and Joseph were hoping things would get better. After getting the news, their life was drastically changed. And even though Joseph got a visit from his own angel, he knew that life would be different. That life was going to be hard, that it was going to get dark for a little bit. You see, Joseph as a man, he knew that even if this was true, people were going to judge his wife. People were going to do the math and they were going to calculate it and they were going to realize that something didn't happen right. And in a time period where everything had to be right, people were going to talk. The ladies were going to talk about Mary behind her back. Joseph knew the guys were going to give him a hard time because something wasn't right. Joseph had no idea what Jesus was going to look like, but he assumed he wasn't going to look like him because he didn't have his blood. And people were going to tease him for that. That even if they believed some level of the story, people were going to tease Jesus for his lifetime. Joseph's not your father. You come from a broken home. You see, Joseph knew that there was going to be struggles for his family, that there was going to be a little bit of darkness. But if what the angels had told Mary and what the angel had told Joseph was true, then there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and all of it would be worth it and then some. Not just for them, but for all people, always. Listen, if you're listening this morning, if you're struggling to see the light at the end of the tunnel, if it feels like Christmas is not the most wonderful time, but a time of hardship, a time of difficulty, a time of coming up short, please know it gets better. Know that God waded into this mess just for you. He is for you. And while we're on the topic, the people here at MomCo, the people watching online, they are here for you as well. That if you're hurting, I highly encourage you, reach out. Don't hurt alone. The story continues. In Luke chapter 2, verse 7, it says, "And she gave birth to her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling cloths, and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn." Mary and Joseph have their baby. Spoilers, I know. It doesn't go quite as planned, though, because, let's face it, nothing ever does in childbirth. They're in a foreign town, and they have no idea where to do, or what to do, or where to go, and so they end up in this barn. And if you're thinking barn in modern day, if you're anything like me, you're thinking big wooden building, red, white, has the little shutter doors on top, lots of hay, cows sleep in there. That's not what it looked like back then. You see, when they didn't have any room and the innkeeper said, well, you can stay down below, What they would mean is that the first level of a building was for the animals. And it was dirty, and there was hay, and there was animal feces, and there was all kinds of gross mud and all kinds of things going on. It wasn't a place that you would put a guest, but all the rooms above where people would normally stay were full. That all the rooms that had beds and blankets and the amenities of life were taken. And so Jesus is born in this terrible place where you wouldn't want to have a child. And as Jesus is born, it really sets the tone for what God is trying to show. You see, Jesus is born in a manger where all the animals live, and it is the lowest possible way to be born. In today's day and age, it would be the almost the equivalent of being born in an alley or in a hovel, if you will. But it's intentional because God works with purpose. Always. You see, if Jesus was born in a castle or a palace, then he would have been as royalty. And that's what the people expected. They wanted a Messiah. They wanted a leader. They wanted a king. But if he was born that way, he would have been inaccessible to the blue-collar people. You see, up until recently, I know that England has had a queen. I've seen that she's got the little corgi dogs and the Instagram accounts and all these silliness. But I've never once met the queen. In fact, if me, as a blue-collar person, wanted to go meet the queen, there would be so many hoops to jump through, and she would have never seen me, even when she was alive. Because that's how royalty works. There's barriers and there's roadblocks to the access, and it's controlled access. But Jesus came for you and for me. He didn't come to put roadblocks and to make it hard or difficult to see him. He didn't come so that you had to fill out a bunch of paperwork and wait in line. He said, I want to be where the people are. He said, if I'm going, then I'm going to where they are, and I want to be available. And being born in a manger, he's available to all of us because he's not fancy. He's not standing out in those kind of ways. He says, I'm here and I'm accessible. He came to be with you and with me. A gift far better than what we expected as people, far better than what the ancient Israelites expected, far more than we hoped for. You know, that first Christmas, after my parents split up and after we opened all those presents, and there were so many presents, I remember thinking how bummed I was. And I didn't have words, but I missed my dad. And that's when my mom pulled me aside and she gave me a gift for my dad. She said, this one is special. She said, this is something that my dad knew would help because he couldn't be here in person with me. And so I opened the gift, and inside there's a watch. Actually, it was his watch. He had it on every day of my life. And I found out later that he had it for every day for 15 years. Until he gave it to me. But what I knew was that it was his watch. And if you hit a button on the watch, then it would play Take Me Out to the Ball Game. My dad loves baseball, and it was a moment that we shared. As I recalled going to games, and as I recalled talking baseball and watching baseball, I knew that when I missed my dad, I could play this watch, and it would help remind me and make me feel connected. You see, much like the watch that I received, the best gifts in life aren't grandiose. They're not super fancy. They're not over the top. Sometimes they just have meaning. The gift of Jesus being born isn't this big event. It's not anything wild and crazy and extraterrestrial or anything that we thought it would be, but it has meaning for you and for me. That humility to come and to be with us in our mess, right where we are, gives us meaning with Jesus. Let's dive back into the story. You see, as Jesus is being born, there's also this side spectacle going on. There's this separate thing happening over in the fields. And there's a group of shepherds, and they're just doing what they do, watching the sheep at night, trying to keep the wolves away, trying to keep warm, just looking up at the stars, passing time. And as they're doing this, an angel comes to them. And mind you, whether you have a biblical background or not, this is a very rare occurrence. For some 400 years, God hasn't spoken. That aside from Mary and Joseph and one other person in Mary's, or two other people in Mary's family, nobody has heard from God in hundreds of years. That means generationally no one's heard from God. And I'm not saying that, oh, they haven't heard much. No, they haven't heard anything. That means no answered prayers, no miracles, no burning bushes, no a pillar of smoke and fire, no drawing sticks to see what God is doing, no prophets. God's not moving. And hear me on this. When you don't hear from God, it's not no news is good news. As many of you know, as moms of young children, if things are too quiet, that means there's a problem. No news is not good news in this occasion. See, when they didn't hear from God, who is their God and their guide through all of history, all of their life together as a country, God has been with them, whether they've been off the rails or whether they've been for him. As they've worked through all of this, God has been with them. Now they fear that they've upset God and that God has left them. And so, as this moment unfolds, as these shepherds see angels, we get this passage out of Luke chapter 2, verses 13 and 14. The angel was talking, and suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of heavenly hosts praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among those with whom he is pleased." Guys, the heavens literally open up, and these shepherds, these blue-collar base trade school people, get this glimpse into heaven, and they see angels as far as the eye can see, and they're all praising God, and they're telling them peace on earth with those whom God has pleased. It's the most amazing message, and it's not just for them. It's for everyone with whom God is pleased. That is to say, those who are faithful, those who are working on behalf of God, those who are praying, those who are dealing with God, those who are working and growing in their relationship with God, there is joy and there is peace. And they go out and they tell everybody. And listen, they're not the most popular people. But this is the biggest news that the world needs to know. That not only is God still there, not only is God still watching, but God is moving and he is pleased with some of the people. Those who are faithful. Those who are working at it. The Bible calls this peace that surpasses understanding. And listen, that's exactly what it is. When we're in struggles, and we all have struggles, the peace that comes from God transcends our struggles. That is to say that while we're in our struggles, we know that everything will be okay because God will work it to be okay. Because we know we're not alone. And it doesn't make the struggles easier. It doesn't mean the struggles go away. Listen, struggles suck. Hard times suck. It just is what it is. They're difficult. They're messy. They're a pain. They're draining emotionally, physically. Hard times still suck. Whether you have peace or you don't have peace, hard times still suck. They always will. But there is a calm in our hearts that we will get through this because we have God's help. That is the peace that God gives. That's the peace that he gave us that first Christmas, and that peace that he continues to give us as we grow with him. But the story's not over yet. There's still more people that come to see Jesus. You see in Matthew chapter 2, verse 11, it says this, "And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and they worshipped him. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh." You see, the craziest birth story in history isn't quite over, because there's a group of people that have come to see Jesus. And you can call them, sometimes we call them magi, sometimes we call them kings, sometimes we call them wise men. But in any event, what we know is that these are well off people from far away. They're not kings, but they're definitely not peasants. And their journey has been long, and it's all based off of a star in the sky and that they thought had meaning. That is to say that in their home country, they were gathered together and they were looking at the stars and they were worshiping based on what they saw. And they realized that there's a new star, something they hadn't seen before. And as they realized this, they realized that there was a prophecy about this star in the sky. And they decided to pack up and to go and to figure out what's going on. And they travel from far away into Israel, and they come to see Herod, who was in charge at the time. And they think, oh, surely this new God would be born here. This special person would be born here. But he's not there. And so after they leave King Herod, after they make their way out of there, they come to Jesus in a manger, in the dirt, in the mud. And they start to worship him. They start to give him gifts. They start to present to him. And if we're being honest, the gifts are nice, but really, the gifts are a small fortune for Mary and Joseph. Now, Mary and Joseph, because Joseph is a carpenter, because Jesus wasn't planned, because of all this unfolding the way that it has, because of the scandal that is going on with them, they're not extremely well off. They're not what we would call loaded. And so, in this moment, these gifts of frankincense, myrrh, and gold, these are important gifts to them. And listen, it's weird, okay? Mary and Joseph, they have a baby. It's in a barn, circumstances being what circumstances are. These hairy, dirty, blue-collar people show up, and they want to see Jesus, which is weird. And then these other wise men come, and they come with gifts, and these are small fortunes that they show up with, which is also weird. And Mary's storing all this information. She knows she's got this message from the angel, but it's still weird watching it unfold. Knowing beforehand doesn't make it that much easier in the moment. But God never wastes a moment. You see, the gold and the frankincense and the myrrh, the gifts that they had brought, are actually used to fund later, if you read through the book of Matthew or Luke or any of the Gospels, they're used to fund Jesus and Joseph and Mary's escape out of Israel into Egypt for a while. That God uses these moments, and these moments make a difference. But more important than the gifts that they brought was what they understood. You see, more important than the gifts that the wise men brought was the gift of recognizing Jesus for who he was. You see, after traveling for thousands of miles, they came and they worshiped a baby that was not what they thought that it would be. By all accounts, he seemed like a normal baby. I assume that Jesus was a pretty baby or a wonderful-looking baby, but by all accounts, he was normal. And in that moment, it would have been really easy to say, well, that's not what I had pictured. That's not what I wanted, and so I'm not gonna do this. But they worship the baby because that's what worship looks like. The dedication, the faith, the trust with God. They knew something that we needed to learn. And that's that the best way to celebrate Christmas is not only with presents, but with a life that reflects God's. When I met my wonderful wife, before I met my wife, I should say, I wanted somebody to share my life with. I wanted someone who I could spend my life with. I could share my love of ministry and all these things. And I remember going to God, and it was the only time that I've audibly heard God in my life. And I told God, I need somebody in my life. I want a partner. And God told me, do the work. I was crushed, but I said, okay, no problem. I'll do the work. And like most people, I did the work for about a week, and I went back to God and I said, all right, God, I've done the work. What's up? What are we doing? He said, do the work. A month would go by, I'd come back. God, doing the work. But do the work. And do the work. Eventually, I just started doing the work and not worrying about the time frame because I just felt like there was no end in sight, and so I started to do the work. And as I was doing the work, funny story, my great-grandmother had passed away. And being the only religious person on that side of the family, they had asked me to officiate the funeral, and I told them I would be honored, of course. And so I officiate the funeral, and at the funeral, I meet a friend of my grandma's, someone she went to church with, and the lady said, hey, I have a friend who loves Jesus. That was it. That was the entire story that she gave me. I have a friend who loves Jesus. And I said, all right, I'm in. The only blind date I've ever taken in my life, and it worked. Because God's plan is better than my plan. Because God told me, do the work, and as I was doing the work, God put people in my life. Next year, we celebrate 6 years, and we have 2 wonderful children, and I could not imagine a better life. It's not always easy, not always perfect, but God's plan is much better than my plan, much better than what I thought. Thinking back to the special gift you got for Christmas. Think about how it makes you feel, about how much it means to you. You see, over time, I played with that watch so much that the batteries died, but I still wore it. And as time passed, eventually I lost it. I took it off for my family to put new batteries in it, and it got misplaced. I no longer have that watch. I remember it, but I don't have it. But almost every day of my life, I wear a watch because one day I want my sons to have a piece of me, something that reminds them of me, that's part of who I am. You see, God gave us Jesus himself so that we might carry him with us. The greatest Christmas gift ever, 2,000-something years running. Because nothing beats that. God said, I love you, I care for you, I want you to have me everywhere you go. So this year, as we start the Christmas season, take it all in. Enjoy the Christmas lights and the garland and the trees and the presents and, yes, even the Starbucks holiday drinks. But don't forget to take a moment to remember that family in Bethlehem. The story of Mary and Joseph, a story of hope, humility, joy, and love, and a story of the greatest gift that we have ever received. The gift of Jesus, God with us, and what that means for you and for me.